Yeah. Hi everyone. I will make it short, Meti, so that we have time for a few questions. So thanks a lot for this invitation. So I will start by not Kapta, but a concept called extreme citizen science that we have been running at University College London. It's a group led by Mukhi, where we have been trying for the last 10 years to extend the boundary of citizen science. And basically, one of the first assumptions was uh, to try to develop citizen science with people who do not have access to a smartphone, who live in the global south, for instance, who might not be non-literate, where there is no electricity or no network. And this is what we have been doing in 12 countries, a bit around the world, with indigenous communities, with fishers, pastoralists from Ethiopia, hunter-gatherers from the Congo Basin, fishers from the Pantanal, just to mention a few of them. And this is, for instance, what happened for the first time in the Congo Basin, where hunter-gatherers were just able to share the knowledge of the forest, and that's really, really useful for conservation, because you can have this kind of knowledge from which you can start designing the patrol in the forest to catch poachers and to protect the elephants, for instance. So at this point, and it was in 2022, I was coming back from my field work in the Congo Basin. That's pictures that I took. And working with these kids, you have access to a huge knowledge. It's really this in-depth knowledge, but very localized and very relevant for the context through which it's emerging. And so we were at that time just thinking of how we can scale this approach. So we had designed this app called Sapeli that enabled people to collect and visualize the data they want about the environment. It's really based on co-design. And of course, the limitation of that is that you are working with communities with 10 or 15 people in a couple of places, and it's really expensive because you have to send someone in the field. So we were just thinking how we can scale up this approach, starting from what people have in hands, and we just noticed that people all had WhatsApp. So rather than just bringing a new tool for them, we're just thinking how we can start mapping from WhatsApp, and that's the idea of Kapta. And I will just show you a video that students sent me yesterday night, actually, that presents Kapta. It's a 1.5-minute video, so see, it's a very short talk. Then, yeah, we can go through the website eventually, but it's just for you to understand how it works, and the video will make the job better than me to explain it. So if, Smriti, if there is anything going wrong with the connection, just let me know.
Is a platform that brings people together to create and share WhatsApp maps, turning local knowledge into collective action. To know what's happening on the ground, scientists and researchers need contributions from those who are there. Kapta empowers WhatsApp users everywhere to generate and share real-time data, transforming fragmented information into actionable knowledge. From water supply to post boxes, Kapta works with any data you need.
Slides.
Sorry?
Yeah, sorry, Fabien. We can hear the recording, but we can't see any kind of imagery in the video. It is just focused on your Kapta slide number 6, I think.
Maybe, okay, it's because I share another image. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, good point. So let me just share this other screen. Yeah.
The sound is coming.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just starting again.
Kapta is a platform that brings people together to create maps, turning local knowledge into collective action. To know what's happening on the ground, scientists and researchers need contributions from those who are there. Kapta empowers WhatsApp users everywhere to generate and share real-time data, transforming fragmented information into actionable knowledge. From water supply to post boxes, Kapta works with any data you need. Kapta connects WhatsApp mappers with those who need ground information in 3 simple steps: tasking, mapping, and searching. Step 1. Tasking. Create your task and send it to your network through WhatsApp. Step 2. Mapping. Here's how it works. A community leader creates a WhatsApp group for mapping. The local community of WhatsApp mappers start collecting information by sharing location, describing it, and taking a picture on WhatsApp. Using Kapta Mobile, the community leaders convert the chat into a WhatsApp map and send it to Kapta. Step 3. Searching. Easily search and explore WhatsApp maps to access critical ground-level data. Kapta ensures your individual contributions remain secure while transforming shared data into a living map of collective intelligence. Together, we are not just mapping the world, we are unlocking its stories, empowering action, and advancing global knowledge.
So yeah, we'll stop here. It's been 5 minutes. I hope it's okay. We have time for questions, but that's Kapta in short. So what we have done in a few words to conclude is to turn WhatsApp into a citizen science platform. And it's a very cheap way to collect information and to share information in between users. We have now 2.8 billion WhatsApp users, and it's a very good way to exchange data, collect localized information across people, across cultures and geographies.
Thank you, Fabien. The video was a little choppy, but I hope most people were able to appreciate the different stages of being able to collect data and then be able to especially ask the questions and get a spatially represented version of all that kind of data and information. So we do have 15 minutes left to be able to ask some questions. I imagine that people do have some questions. I know that there's been some in the chat, but we can also just unmute and ask the questions. We're a nice little intimate group here. So maybe just as people start thinking about some of their questions, there is one that Scott had asked about, I guess, the challenges between Europe and then trying to do this in Asia. Scott, do you want to just unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, no, but both of them were fantastic talks. My first question from watching Martin's talk was, this is an EU Horizon funded project. It's all done in the EU. And you mentioned a little bit at the end about, internationalizing this and the opportunities for Asia. We have a hell of a lot of sunshine. But then we do have very different contexts. Somewhere like Hong Kong is pretty similar to Europe in that, it's very developed, dense we have grids. They've had everybody thinks Hong Kong's big skyscrapers, but the village houses here, 100% of them have got solar panels on now. So something like that would work very well. But then you have places where solar is also essential, but much more challenging, like Myanmar and Philippines, where people are having microgrids and maybe government power supply is not working so well. So in these sorts of broader use cases, do you have any thoughts on how these approaches could be rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, this is very pertinent to what we're trying to do at the moment. One of the things that's going to happen over the next few weeks is an open call to set up a working group on citizen science and tackling carbon pollution or climate change mitigation. And what we want to do is to draw on the best methods that are currently out there and do an exercise very similar to Global Mosquito Alert, where we bring together the researchers to try to identify 3 or 4 common methods that could be applied globally and would allow you to scale up climate change, citizen science and climate change mitigation. So that's the first port of call. Of course, the big advantage we've got now is that we've already got a route map from the way we did this with Global Mosquito Alert, and we've also got some of the tools and techniques that people have been developing that we can draw on that are open source. So we've got the GLOBE program working with us on this one, and that map I showed you of all the data coming in from mosquito identifications around the world. That infrastructure, the the code that's behind that is all available for reuse in terms of what we might do for a global citizen science climate change mitigation program. So that working group is not about just promoting Project Aurora. It's about trying to draw out what is the best from all of the research programs that are going on, so that by the time we get to UNEA 7, we've got a cell that we can put to the member states that says this is how you can use citizen science for climate change mitigation. These are the methods that we recommend. These are the tools and the techniques that we believe will work. These are the database systems and the data verification systems that we believe will work. And at the same time, we're involved in dialogue with the chief scientists at UNEP over the development of something called the World Environment Situation Room platform, where they're looking to turn it from being just an example of best practice across the world on environmental issues. And there is a citizen science portal in there at the moment, but to turn that into a real-time data repository that can draw up citizen science data as one of the examples, so that it can be used in the UN decision-making processes. So if I come back to my project level, the Aurora project level will also put together a template on how you can take the Aurora app and convert that for use anywhere in the world. And we'll show you what the data inputs need to be to make that possible, to build the algorithms that you need behind the whole decision-making process when you enter your own personal data on your own energy consumption, on your own transport mileage, on your own heating energy use for gas or timber or wood or coal or whatever it is you're using to heat or cool your home. So there's different strands coming together, and they're all coalescing this year in the direction of COP30 in UNEA 7. I'm a little cautious about COP30 because at the moment the citizen science community is not registered to attend COP, and COP has become a bit of a circus, as you've all seen in the last COP29. UNEA, we understand UNEA a lot better. We understand how resolutions are put together at UNEA, and all the major citizen science associations are now registered with UNEA. So that gives us the right to take up to 10 delegates for each registered association to the UNEA 7. And we have in mind this year to pitch for events in what's known as the green room with the non-government organizations. We were looking to get member states support for a bid for a side event at UNEA 7. And so the delegates have put their names forward. We're going to ask them to lobby their own member state governments to support a bid for a citizen science side event, which is very important. A formal side event gets the member states engaged. A green room event is predominantly the NGOs. And then lastly, we have an opportunity to join the UN Science Policy Business Forum event at UNEA 7, and they will give us a slot to talk about citizen science and climate change mitigation. And then on top of that, if we can get our act together, we have the opportunity to put 12 blogs out on the UN Science Policy Business Forum portal, building up the interest, if you like, in citizen science up to UNEA 7. So for me, the journey that we've been on since about 2012 on citizen science has been about proving first that it works, proving that we've got the techniques, proving that we've got the data validation systems, that it's a cost-effective way of helping to deliver global environmental and national legal environmental laws. That work has largely been done. So now it's a case of how do we make the argument to transition from just the research in the pilots to be able to come across and support legislation, be it international legislation, regional legislation, or national legislation. And that's a much more difficult problem to crack because most regulators don't understand citizen science. They don't understand the skill sets that's needed to build bottom up. They see it sometimes as a cheap way of getting data. In other words, a citizen is just giving you data. It's much more than that, as we all know. So there is a discussion to be had with the regulators, and there are pioneering examples to be driven through to show how citizen science can support environmental law. I'll give you one last example. If you come across to Denmark now, I get the right country, the Netherlands, sorry, if you come across to Netherlands or Holland, They now monitor air quality with citizen science, and they have something called Let's Do It Together. So they have their formal monitoring network, and they have a citizen science monitoring network that the state supports. So they've integrated the two. And for me, that's a classic example of how you can benefit the community, because they've identified air pollution problems that nobody knew existed in the Netherlands. And it's quite an advanced country with quite good monitoring. But even there, they've been able to show they've completely misunderstood the extent of the air pollution damage that's being done to their community. That creates pressure for change, and that's a good thing. I have to say, not everybody would agree with that. Not every country would agree with that. But in the case of the Netherlands, they're showing you how it can be done. If you could imagine that being expanded, take India, for example, where there will be examples of air quality monitoring going on in the cities with citizen science. If you can integrate that in the national monitoring network, that is hugely powerful for driving change. And here's an example of an environmental problem that kills more people globally than COVID did. So it really is an important area where citizen science could be making a major difference. And I always talk about the three problem areas: climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And by and large, citizen science is making a major contribution to biodiversity loss. We've barely begun when it comes to pollution and climate change, so that the opportunities are immense. I hope that helps, Scott. I've gone on a bit, my apologies.
Well, thank you, Martin, for also sharing the examples too. Fabien, then I wanted to just ask you if there is interest, because of course in much of Asia, WhatsApp is a very popular platform and tool, like you identified, that a big proportion of the world's population use it. So how can people get in touch or be able to use the platform? Do you have any links that you could share?
Yeah, so maybe on the video it wasn't obvious, but you can go on Kapta.Earth. I will just put it in the chat. There is a wait list for now on, but we'll open this for being used. So just to make it clear, the principle is that through this tool, you can task to a group of citizens. They organize themselves through WhatsApp group in which they share location, pictures, and information. And Kapta will convert this chat into maps, and then you can access back this data in the cloud. So to access the data you have been tasking the citizens to collect. So it's more like going from bottom up to like middle ground, top down, bottom up, to find a platform. What we wanted to link is both the people who need the data and the people who can produce this data. So Kapta.Earth, and maybe there is not a majuscule, but there is a wait list that will open in the coming weeks, hopefully.
Okay, so people could jump onto the website, and then there's some information about joining a wait list to be able to get more information about as it's coming out, because it's hot off the press. It's really new, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's really a prototype that basically now we are about to test with real users. That might be you.
Great, yeah. Then we'll invite lots of people in this webinar to be able to also play with it. We have another question. Shyam, do you want to unmute and share your question?
Yeah, thank you, Martin, Fabien, for the nice question. Fabien, a specific question for you, because as you mentioned that WhatsApp is a very popular especially in Global South. What kind of the data we can collect from that? Because like for iNaturalist, if we ask someone to provide the image through the WhatsApp, it cannot provide a lot of the metadata, like georeferences of the space and all kind of. What kind of the data we can use through the Kapta, and in which area we can use it? Because from this video, I got that there is a Kapta, but I'm not able to get the very basic essence of it.
Yeah, so the advantage of using Kapta is that you can collect a lot of data, but you have mostly three attributes. You have the location, so GPS, a location. You got the picture and the description of the picture. So we have these three elements, and from that you can map out. We have been testing that for biodiversity, pollution. Of course, we did some water quality, and so far it's working really well. the idea is that the people can organize themselves in WhatsApp groups. So you can create a WhatsApp group that is, for example, for water quality, or for, I don't know, for just, is the water well working or not, for example, in the context of drought. And here, people in the group will just go to the location and say, here the water well is working or not, and you can put thumbs up, thumbs down, or working or not. You describe it, and you will have access to this data. So when you will go on each location, you will have the description for each description, you will have the associated picture and the description of the picture.
Yeah, could I just come in as well and just say, Fabian, that there is some fabulous work going on in Nigeria at the moment in terms of water quality monitoring. And I'm sure they would find the Kapta package really helpful to what they're doing.
Okay.
And again, this whole area of water quality is a major opportunity for citizen science globally. If we can just get some consistent methods agreed, consistent data gathering systems put in place, and be able to show people the scale of what can be achieved, it will open eyes in terms of the regulatory community about what becomes possible. But there's a lot of organization needed to make this effective. And really to get the full advantage from this. The other thing I like about the Kapta approach is that one of the things we can't yet do globally is just show the sheer extent of citizen science engagement that's growing around the world. I mean, it may be that your platform with the different tiers of activity would be a way to do that. And if we could actually show that up onto the real-time data systems of the World Environment Situation Room, we can make a real impact at this point, because we have no idea yet what the sheer scale is of the global citizen science movement. Everybody's operating in their own silos, in their own projects, and we don't pull together an overview of what's going on and understanding the value of it as well. People get very nervous when I talk about putting a cash value on this, but actually that's what makes policymakers sit up and listen, is when you can show them the added value that you're bringing to resolving the big problems of our time.
Absolutely, Martin. Thank you. And that's why on the platform, you can not only see your data, but the data of others, right? If you are working in an area and someone is mapping, water quality, and the other one is mapping, for example, energy consumption, you will see that you are both working, and you might have an overlap between this polygon that reflect the area where the data are being collected. And this is where you can start also building collaboration and exchange data. So that's the next stage of development for Kapta. That's what we have in mind.
And there's one other thing that's relevant in all of this, is it's all very well collecting data on, say, drinking water quality, but it gets really powerful if you can then collect data on health effects. Yeah. So if you can actually get people to record their own health consequences of drinking polluted water and capture that data at the same time and show the straight correlation between polluted drinking water and human health. And every time you do that, you get citizens will engage in much larger numbers if you can show the relevance to their daily lives and help them manage the risks associated with the environmental problems that they're dealing with. And the drinking water quality one in the global south is classic for that.
Merely up to you. So we are passionate.
Yeah.
Fabian, maybe just to build on Shyam's question, in terms of like even the format of data, is it possible to just do voice recordings? Because oftentimes people use that function of WhatsApp to give data. And is that possible for, I guess, data analysis on the Kapta platform?
So unfortunately not yet. We would like to implement that. We are in between two grants. So we would like to implement that, yeah. And then you can have the automatic transcription. And with this, AI, GPT, all, it can really, pull out what you need. So there is a lot of development to be done. We are also to have this ongoing support, developing a chatbot to say people, as you say, how they're mapping, to have the chatbot automatically replying to your user, to the users for you, as a kind of, because we know that it's always a lot of time for people who are running these citizen science projects a lot of time for implementing and designing the project and supporting the users and the participants. So yeah, we are taking to account all of this and trying to make a great tool that can be used and that is as cheap as possible or free eventually.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be quite a lot of interest and we want it quickly because the applications can be really quite profound and flexible. Scott, I think, has a question. But before, I know people are starting to go because I appreciate that we're going over time. I did include some information about how to connect with us on Citizen Science Asia on the website and by email. So have a look at that if you need to run off. And if you do need to run, thank you so much for joining, but feel free to stay on. We have a few more questions. Go ahead, Scott.
I have a question for Fabian about another feature of WhatsApp that I don't know if they've been looking at, but the encryption, right? Like WhatsApp is good between, like device to device, but not necessarily. But then the devices there's data on the device that you may want to encrypt if people get them, because like from being in Myanmar, the government, this is an example of somewhere that the government only controls 50% of the country, but you may want to collect data in the other parts, but basically anything identifiable for people in the non-government and controlled areas puts them at risk. Reporting environmental issues in these places can get people in trouble. If you're working on extreme citizen science, right? There's big parts of the world that there are huge challenges doing citizen science, and that's it. So, have you thought about encryption anyway? That's my question.
Yeah, we have been thinking about that. I know that there is a lot of issue around the ethics of data collection and data in general in citizen science. It is something that we are asking ourselves as researchers. But if you think when you are sharing your chatting with your friends on WhatsApp, you have this end-to-end encryption, but then they can do what we are proposing to do with Kapta. You have the export functionality and you can export the chat. So what we are doing is to hack to some extent this functionality to pull out the data. So the encryption is reflect what is what WhatsApp is offering.
Yeah, could I also say, I mean, my experience on seeing a number of citizen science apps that develop is that when you look at the ethics of all of this, that citizens are much more comfortable in giving data to the academic institutions than they are to governments. So when I look over at the COVID pandemic in the UK, King's College London COVID symptom tracker app, which got, I think, 4.5 million people using it, was run alongside the government app, which got almost nobody using it. And the government app collapsed. And the King's College London app was a huge success, and the government hated it. And the reason they hated it was because it was giving information at 3 o'clock every day on what was happening with the disease, how the symptoms were changing, how the disease was spreading, and they couldn't keep up. And so it was giving information out that contradicted the government. And therefore, even in the UK, that created problems for the way that the app was used. The government tried to cut the funding, or it wouldn't give public funding to the app. And the app itself was actually funded initially by venture capitalists. They were running out of money. And they only managed to keep the app going by launching a crowdfunding appeal. The crowdfunding appeal raised £1 million in a week, and they did that twice. And at the second time they did it, the government gave in and started funding the program. But this is a government that is in theory sympathetic to citizen science. Go to Myanmar, and that's a totally different proposition. And I recognize that, Scott.
The
It creates major
the
difficulties.
Yangon Air Quality Initiative, they're in hiding basically because their data was showing that the most of the air pollution was coming from military bases. So
Yeah.
think in situations like that, like encryption and this is incredibly important data, but it's like really unique.
And it's not just
Myanmar.
I mean, the United States had the same problem with water quality monitoring out in the prairie provinces. where the people that were collecting the data were threatened with legal lawsuits. It's a different way of suppressing the collection of the data. But they didn't like the fact that they were showing that the rivers were polluted, and the pollution was mainly from farming, and it was mainly the farmers that ran the legislation programs in that particular state in the US. So they used the law and to try to suppress the collection of data in the same way that you can just, you use brutal methods to stop people collecting data as well. So the ethics is really important.
It sounds like we could do a separate whole webinar just on the ethics and the politicization of how to build community action, but still safeguard people. It's a messy gray area, but
well, it's like there was some work in Indonesia on rainforests, felling illegal logging in the rainforests, where people were tracking from satellite data the illegal logging, and they basically had to look at the whole ethics of that. They were using school children all around the world using polygons, different sides of a polygon, and if 5 or 6 polygons coalesced, then you had an illegal logging operation, and that could be identified by a child in a school anywhere in the world. But the actual follow-up was done by proper organized, secure gangs going into the forests with support from the enforcement agencies, because it was too dangerous for anybody else to go in, quite frankly. But it's a nice example of how you got the ethics sorted out so that you could use the global power of citizen science without putting people at risk in that individual country.
well, thanks for that example. Martin, do you have the name of that? I'd like to, or if you...
I'd have to dig it out and
okay.
see whether it's still running. But the principle of it, I think, is probably if you go to the Globe program, they can provide you with the information on it.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting model to be able to...
They were also looking at whether the same model could be used for sand extraction in India. I don't know if anybody's on from India, but you'll know that your beach can disappear overnight. And so how you monitor your beaches and who's taking illegal sand extraction, again, can be a very dangerous operation. And they were I know the UN were looking to see whether they could use the same principles of using satellite tracking data and citizen scientists around the world to feed information in to the enforcement agencies. But whether that got anywhere, I don't know.
Someone wrote in the chat, sand mafia in India.
Missed that, sorry.
We have sand mafia more active in a river than in a beach.
More in the rivers than the beach.
Yeah, in the Himalayan river, everywhere you have a sand mafia. And they are very powerful.
Oh.
Especially
yeah,
the
because it's a very valuable material when you've got a rapidly growing economy. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I recognize we are quite well over time, and I'm sure people are busy doing so many things, and that it's getting to be evening in the more eastern parts of Asia. So I just wanted to wrap up and say thank you so much for everybody to come, to carve out the time and to just be interested in the citizen science movement overall, but also trying to see how it can be applied into an Asian context. Oh, I just have a message coming up. Sorry, really quickly. It's a question for Martin. It was about, oh yes, when it was that the schools were participating, what approach was taken to convince the management of those schools to convince and motivate their students and faculty to participate in the energy community program? If you could speak to that just briefly.
Yeah, there's a whole program. There's a whole program going on in Europe called Educate for Climate that I'd urge you to have a look at. It literally is called Educate with a number 4 climate, and they've got a website, lots of supporting material on there to help convince, if you like, educators on what's required. And they're building up now something called the whole school approach, where they're drawing on the best practice from all of Europe. And one of the things is to share this information, because it's not just European information, it's applicable anywhere in the world, and it can be learnt from and modified. So convincing people to take part is about de-risking the program. So making sure that they are linked to professionals that can show them that there aren't major risks, structural risks to buildings, financial risks and so forth. So getting solar cooperatives involved is a great way to do that. And then the other one is to show them that the financial benefits are substantial in moving away from fossil fuels. You need to have drivers, and that's a major driver for any institution that wants to reduce costs. So risk and cost, basically.
Well, thanks, Martin. And I mean, I think especially in Asia, where there is tremendous concern about the financial side as well, that those can be quite big drivers, as you say. So
well, I'm astonished. I'm absolutely astonished how much money can be saved from the energy transition. There's recently in the UK, the CBI, the business organization in the UK, just published a report showing the economic advantage that comes from the energy transition and moving to net zero. There is so much misinformation around that the moving to net zero is going to cost countries, and the reverse is true. It generates fantastic economic growth opportunities, and down to individuals. I can speak from a personal point of view. In the UK, I have saved thousands of pounds by moving to near net zero in my own personal life, both in the energy consumption, reduction in energy consumption, the lower costs of renewable energy, and switching to electric traction for my own mobility. So don't believe the doomsayers. The transition is really in your own personal, it will give you lots of personal benefits in your own lives, let alone for your communities.
Well, on that positive note, thank you, Martin. That's a good place to finish lightly, since we've been talking about so many of the issues, but that this is a really, citizen science is a great movement, and then looking at the drivers and incentives related to
And great,
these
Smriti,
transitions.
thank you for the opportunity to take part and for bringing together this international group. We need more of it.
Well, I hope that we'll be able to have a few more. And then actually, that was the final thing that I was going to mention, that with the Citizen Science Asia platform, we hope to have probably every 2 months or so webinars where we just have people sharing, especially from outside of Asia, but also within Asia, to be able to really capitalize on this interest and, as you say, really build from the ground up to create this kind of change. So look out for future messages about being able to connect with these communities. So I just want to say my thank you to Martin, thank you to Fabien for being able to share your perspective work, which is just tremendous in terms of the impact that it has and will continue to have, I'm sure. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day, evening, night, wherever you are, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.